Okay. Good evening, folks.
Good evening, everyone. We are recording. Good evening, Erev Tov, Zalmen Mlotek, and thank you all for joining us. My name is Carol Kozak Ward. I am the founder and music director of the Colorado Hebrew Chorale. Welcome to the Chorale's fourth L'chaim, a taste of Jewish music from anywhere program. As you pour yourselves a beverage and prepare for a trip to Anatevka, the fictional setting of Fiddler on the Roof, here are some housekeeping reminders. Both the Zoom chat and the Facebook Live comments section will be monitored. So if you have a question for our presenter, please post it there and we'll try to get to them towards the end of the event. Information about the Chorale's supporters will also be found in the chat. And now, sit back, relax. We are about to run a short video, after which you will hear words of introduction about our guest presenter, Zalmen Mlotek, shared by Colorado Hebrew Chorale member, Fred Karp. Take it away, video.
A fiddler offen Dakh. Meshuggah, nein? Aber bei uns in Anatevka ist jeder einer Fiddler offen Dakh.
Tradition, 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 tradition. Nur a Größe, she's a Mazoyidin, was wir sehen da. Es hat a Poli, was dem Echetolim, durch ein Michelina, Mazodin geschah. Mit Mazelot, mit Broche, und ewig, Jesus soll hier sein. Und heute Mazol ist die Parus, nach Maschin ist für uns, alle drei.
And now, Fred Karp.
Good evening. The Jewish present and the Jewish future are shaped by Jewish memory. We are not suddenly sprung up as a people, as a religion or a culture. Our history is both imagined and real. Imagined in the sense that we have no direct evidence of some of our most momentous events, and real as transmitted from parents to children and as documented in images and writings. We keep the memory of this night as a reminder of a moment when our people, religion, and culture came under threat of annihilation. On November 9th and 10th, 1938, coordinated attacks looted and destroyed Jewish homes, shops, and synagogues throughout Nazi Germany and Austria. This is only an intensification by party stormtroopers of legal, economic, and social actions against Jews already taken by the Nazi-led government. With some 7,000 shops damaged and looted, 1,400 synagogues and other religious institutions ransacked and burned, and 30,000 adult men brought to Dachau, Buchenwald, Sachsenhausen, and other concentration camps, Kristallnacht may well be considered the beginning of the Shoah. Our grief at the physical destruction is amplified by the attendant loss of Jewish culture, both religious and secular. We owe an immense debt of gratitude to those who were able to find new homes for the writing, the poetry, the theater, and the music after World War II. Among these were the family of our guest tonight, Zalmen Mlotek. Here are some of his own words. My first language was Yiddish. My father was a Yiddish writer, activist, and survivor from Warsaw in 1939, who spent the war years in Shanghai before coming to America. My mother was an American-born pianist and folklorist. In my earlier years, I studied to be a conductor of orchestral classical music. After pursuing several different avenues of conducting in musical theater and orchestral music, it seems I was destined to return to my familial roots. My father dedicated himself to the continuation of a culture that was almost decimated. His work as a writer, teacher, activist, and Yiddish event producer, together with my mother's passion for Yiddish songs, was the cultural DNA in which I was raised. The tightly knit community that I grew up in the amalgamated houses in the Bronx, were a vibrant mix. Some were immigrants, some were Holocaust survivors, most were first-generation Americans. They were active in many organizations like the Workmen's Circle and the Jewish Labor Bund. The Bundists, with whom my father was affiliated, were strong proponents of the concept that Jews should be able to live as Jews wherever they resided, and were committed to social justice and Yiddish culture. The names of Mr. Mlotek's musical mentors and institutions are familiar. Bernstein, Maida, Levine, Juilliard, New England Conservatory, Tanglewood, Manhattan School, Mannes School. Infused into his training as a composer and conductor was a deep love and knowledge of Yiddish culture. Adding together this training and passion, Mr. Mlotek was able to revitalize Yiddish and klezmer music in Broadway, off-Broadway, touring and televised productions. Mr. Mlotek has presented master classes in Yiddish art song, folk and theater music, and taught at Columbia, Yeshiva, Jewish Theological Seminary, Hebrew Union College, Berkeley, and Bar Ilan in Israel. We members of the Colorado Hebrew Chorale remember vividly his workshop at the Plus Theater of the JCC in 2009. As artistic director of the National Yiddish Theater Volksbühne, which was founded on New York's Lower East Side in 1915 under the auspices of the Workmen's Circle, Mr. Mlotek has created as much a haven for Yiddish-speaking performers as a trove of productions for New York national and international audiences. And then, in 2017, this conception, Fiddler auf dem Dakh, in Yiddish, Meshuggah, nein? But Zalmen Mlotek made it happen. And after moving to 42nd Street, the show played to sold-out audiences and won multiple awards in 2019. As for planned tours in 2020, well, we know what happened. But the theater continues with Volksbühne live performances on YouTube and a planned Hanukkah spectacular fundraiser on December 8th. I would continue with this introduction, but like Tevye, my imagination can no longer summon words. If I could, yabba dibby 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 dum, and all night long I'd biddy biddy bum. We welcome Zalmen Mlotek to the Colorado Hebrew Chorales, L'chaim.
Chaim, thank you, Fred. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Leah, for inviting me to speak to you tonight and have a virtual L'chaim with you. They say, that the Yiddish expression is "Af jede Yiddische Simcha darf man vergießen atrer." So at every Jewish celebration, one has to drop a tear. So I appreciate the remembrance of Kristallnacht tonight as we celebrate in 2020 the revitalization of a culture that was almost decimated by the Nazis. To tell you the story of my involvement with the Yiddish Fiddler and my work, as you heard from Fred, I must begin with telling you a bit about my folks. Yosel and Zalmen Mlotek, and I think there's a slide there. Leah is going to, there is a slide going on. Oh yeah, so the next slide is the picture of my folks with their third songbook. As you heard, my father was a writer, a pedagogue, a longtime educational director of the Workmen's Circle, which produced music festivals, tours, and as well as maintaining the Volksbühne, the longtime theater company that was founded in 1915 as a branch of the Workmen's Circle. My parents loved singing, loved music. My father was an amateur mandolin player, and my mother was a pianist with her sister, Malka Gottlieb. They taught me to play the piano. My mother was born in East New York in 1922. My father born in Proszewicz, Poland, near Warsaw and Krakow in 1918. And they raised me with Yiddish as my mother tongue, as they did my brother, Mark. They raised me with Yiddish and as my first language, and my house was full of Yiddish song. My parents would have late night musical soirees where the leading Yiddish performers of the day would come and visit and sing into the late hours. Names like Sidor Bolarski, Masha Benya, Ben Bonus, Minna Byrne, Shmuel Fisher, Fredo Lifshitz, and later years, Emil Gorovitz and his wife, Margarita Polonskaya. My father, in his role as Workmen's Circle, was known as the address for Yiddish in the United States, as most of the public performances were generated from his office. And my parents in later years had a column in the Yiddish Forward called Pearls of Yiddish Poetry, where they would encourage readers to send in remembrances, either in text or in recordings. My mother would get hundreds of cassette tapes a week of songs people remembered. And my mother had this encyclopedic mind and could tell you where the song was published, who wrote it, and the provenance. Basheva Singer called them the Sherlock Holmes of Yiddish song. Eventually, they published 3 songbooks, and you could go to the next slide. So, and my father would bring home, these are the songbooks that they published. He would bring home all the latest Yiddish records that would come out in Yiddish. If you can, next slide. It was 1965 when the Yiddish version of Fiddler was produced in Israel after a successful run of it in Hebrew. They recorded, and the record arrived in the Bronx as everything Yiddish recorded would pass my parents' ears and awareness. I don't know if I had already seen the English version. It had opened in '64, but I imagine I did, as the music was already very familiar to most American Jews, as it spread like wildfire when it opened on Broadway in '64. In community settings and in Yiddish summer camps, we started to present these Yiddish words to Fiddler. While the Yiddish words of Fiddler spread through the Yiddish summer camps and Yiddish institutions, a full production was never done in America in Yiddish. The first production was done in Montreal by the Montreal Yiddish Theater. My work in theater, having musically directed off-Broadway and summer stock productions, led to my position as the artistic director of the National Yiddish Theater, the Volksbühne. And I always was thinking about what shows I could produce in Yiddish that would bring audiences. And it was after several successful productions and a new home at the Museum of Jewish Heritage at Battery Place that I thought of producing Fiddler in Yiddish. And I understood, having produced theater in New York, that in order for me to present this iconic musical in Yiddish, it would have to be presented with the same professional standards as if it was being presented on Broadway, as I knew that the idea of it in Yiddish for the first time would capture the imagination of the press, and it did. You could go to the next slide. In fact, when we first announced that we were going to present Fiddler in Yiddish, the New York Times ran a story, and we started to get inquiries from actors, designers, directors from all over interested in participating. I'd worked with Joel Gray some years before, and when I was considering whom to direct our Fiddler in Yiddish, I consulted with Hal Prince, the original producer, and Sheldon Harnick, the lyricist, with whom I also had known. In 2014, the Volksbühne produced a 50-year birthday celebration for Fiddler, where I gathered over 100 past alumni of many of the original Broadway production, the movie. Chaim Topol came in from Israel to be part of the event. Next slide, thank you. Hal Prince had worked with Joel in Cabaret on Broadway and gave me his hechsher, his approval. I wrote to Joel telling about our plans to do Fiddler in Yiddish for the first time in the United States and wondered if he would be interested in either playing Tevye or directing. He wrote me back immediately, let's talk. He told me, then we met and he thought the time had passed for him to play Tevye, but he would be interested in directing, but he didn't know Yiddish. I was surprised because of his yichus. He was as being the son of Mickey Katz, the famous klezmer clarinetist whose parodies of Yiddish and English pieces were very popular. He did know some Yiddish, but he couldn't really have a conversation. We met and he told me of his special relationship with Fiddler. Hal Prince had invited him to come to DC and to see Fiddler before it opened in New York. And I explained to him that we would have plenty of people around him to coach the people on the Yiddish, but it was his artistic vision that I was particularly interested in. And I invited him to come to see the theater at the museum, and he fell in love with the space. And he started to call the top designers, Broadway designers he had worked with, to invite them to see the space, as they were all intrigued by his invitation to reconceive Fiddler without the big sets, huge stage, etc. I also knew instinctively that announcing him as director would bring another flurry of press, but I had no idea to what extent. Forbes picked up the story in March when we announced, and we were flooded with calls from actors. We received over 2,500 inquiries from actors about auditions for 26 roles. When we finally posted auditions, we saw over 700 people. There's a lot to say about how we presented the piece, which is usually performed with 40 people in the cast down to 26. Had a lot to do with our choice of choreographer, Stash Kamiech. And if you can go to the next slide. This is a picture of Stash at a audition. Stash Kamiech was recommended to me by the Jerome Robbins Foundation, and he was the right choice to choreograph and to be Joel's right hand, as he had been in over 1,500 productions of Fiddler as a dancer first, then assistant choreographer to Sammy Bays, who was Jerome Robbins' assistant. In this slide, you see Stash watching in front of the mirror, and his dance captain, Rosie Jonetti, who also played our Chava, leading some of the men through their paces in one of the many dance auditions. The audition process took about a month, all of April of 2018. We, my associate Matul Didner, and I prepared recordings of selected songs with the Yiddish and some scenes in Yiddish for the people we would eventually call back. At first, our auditions, we only heard people sing whatever they wanted to come in and do. We were only allowed by equity rules to give them one line of Yiddish to repeat back to see if they had the potential. And based on their initial response to that one line, we would decide if we wanted to bring them back and give them more material to audition with. We posted the audition material recordings and text online so they could work on it at home. The line, which we used in our recent auditions for the Australian production, which was to be in September, the line was, "Willst du versuchen mein Geschmacken Zimmes?" Do you want to taste my delicious tzimmes? A line thought up by Matul Didner, which had many of the intricate difficulties of Yiddish that we would listen to and decide if the person had the aptitude. And we felt that in the 3 weeks of rehearsals with 1 week of tech, they would be able to master the Yiddish. Yes, 3 weeks of rehearsals with 1 week of tech. Rehearsal began June 4th. We opened on July 4th, 2018. I skipped much about reaching out to the various rights holders of Fiddler, but I started with the Yiddish translator, Shraga Friedman, who was a noted Israeli director, a native Yiddish speaker, and I reached out to his family, his daughter Yael, and we met in Tel Aviv the summer of 2017 when I started to think about the whole project. You can imagine with a cast of 26, I knew I had to have at least 4 papas, 4 mamas, 4 sons, and 4 daughters for tradition, for the sound to have a sound. And we ended up having people double throughout. It was a very complicated stage plot in the end, managed by an incredible stage manager, Kat West. We simply didn't have the budget to do a full 45 cast member production. Next slide, thank you. The first day of rehearsals on the stage of Safra at the museum consisted of a meet and greet, this is the picture of Joel addressing the assembled cast, crew, and special invited guests. I had invited Sheldon Harnick, the lyricist, and Alyssa Stein, the widow of Joe Stein, the book writer, to come and be present at this event. Behind Joel are the renderings of the set by the designer Beowulf Boret, a several-time Tony Award winner, and the costume designs by Anne Hould Ward, another Tony Award winner. It was a magical experience to have everyone assemble and to go through the singing of tradition on the stage before we separated and went into rehearsals, which was originally translated as Die Teure. Then we changed it to Traditia, which is another story. The engagement at the museum was to have run 6 weeks, but because of sold out houses and rave reviews, we extended 4 times, a 6-month totally sold out run at the museum before we moved uptown. The production downtown attracted many uptown Broadway producers who came down to see what the fuss was all about. The decision to move to Stage 42, an off-Broadway venue, as opposed to Broadway venue, proved to be the right decision for us. We were guided by veteran Broadway producer Manny Eisenberg, who advised us to go with the producers who were offering an off-Broadway run, as opposed to the producers who were talking Broadway. Responsible financial analysis dictated we open in an off-Broadway house which seated 499 people, 1 seat less than the Broadway minimum of 500. Our theater downtown housed 320 people. Equity, the Actors Union, allowed us a few extra days of rehearsals with actors because we made the case that we were also teaching these people Yiddish at the same time, besides all the play itself. So I had 1 musical rehearsal where I first met everyone in a rehearsal room, and I'll never forget that feeling of hearing them all come sing together because they had all had the score beforehand and had studied it. They were all very excited to come to that first meeting, knowing much of the score. And of course, the work on the Yiddish began immediately. Slide 9, thank you. We created scripts that would highlight the text they were speaking. So on top, the Yiddish translated into English. On the bottom, a literal translation of that Yiddish. And underneath that, in the blue, the original Stein text, or Sheldon Harnick, the original Fiddler on the Roof text, so that people could understand every word and and relate every word in every sentence to what they knew. Slide 10. So here is the text of the Sabbath prayer, and I thought we could go through the text a bit so you could appreciate the subtle but significant differences between the Yiddish and the original. And then we'll look together at the score, which I had to convince MTI Music Theater International, the agency that holds all the material for Broadway shows, to send me the original documents electronically because I needed to prepare the scores in the same way singers sing in foreign languages, would have the music written, every word translated so they could see the literal translation. I don't know if I have that in the next score, but here in this text, you can see the text of the Sabbath prayer. And I thought if people felt like singing, Zoom really doesn't work, but I'll sing it and you could sing along somehow, follow the words. You could see how the Yiddish is slightly different than in the first in the first case, Tata Zisa Gott von Avram is not may the Lord protect and defend you. It means dear Father, God of Abraham. And the next one is Kommen soll Mashiach schon schnell. May he always, the Messiah should come quickly, as opposed to may he always shield you from shame. Violus Vatafim, because waiting for him is, may you come to be, das ganze Volk von Yisrael, the entire people of Israel. So this one has significant differences in the translation, but as many people commented about what made the translation so special was that it used, the writer Shlomo Friedman borrowed from Shalom Aleichem, and the original, and he used some of the Shalom Aleichem text. So I'm gonna why don't we try to sing the Sabbath prayer. Tate Zisa Gott von Avram, kommen soll Mashiach schon schnell, weil es wart auf ihn das ganze Volk von Israel. Sarah, Rivke, Rachel und Esther, Mensch, die Kinder Leulam, Goel. Gott in you, mein Gott, und hielt sie von der Fremd und Schmach. Gott soll geben von Masel die Mekayim sein, soll sein heilig Wort. Wenn Schabes soll beim Sedenstisch nicht sein, kein Ort. Tate Zisa Gott von Avram, das Hof von unser, little taste of how it sounded in Yiddish. The next couple of slides, I think, are just some pictures. You can advance them, Leah, thanks. This is our rabbi in a scene. The next one that's our Tevye, Stephen Sky Bell with the, I think that must be tradition. Next slide. Thank you. That's our girls in Matchmaker. Many of them weren't Jewish, by the way. This is Sabbath prayer, of course. I think that maybe that's the last one. No, that's the dream, of course. And this is where we recorded the score. We did a cast recording available on Amazon. 17, thank you. The next slide. The strategy for the Broadway producers was for us to close the show downtown in January, take the few weeks to restage, relight, and open in early February. And we opened at stage 42 here on 42nd Street on February 4th, 2019. We ran to mostly sold out houses for the majority of 2019. And after 10 months uptown, we closed on January 5th, 2020. At the time of closing, we had already met and signed a deal with Opera Australia, which was to mount a new production using local actors with our design and creative team to open at the Sydney Opera House in September, play for 6 weeks, and then move to Melbourne for for another 6 weeks. The producers also had a deal for the entire company and orchestra to fly to China to play in 3 major cities for 1 week, which was to take place in April. We received a letter the 3rd week in January that due to reasons beyond their control, they would have to postpone the Fiddler production of China. Of course, we know now why. They didn't mention that then. The creative team with myself flew down to Melbourne and Sydney to hold auditions in February, and I returned in March, beginning of March, to find people wearing masks in airports. A national tour had been planned with an opening in LA for 6 weeks and then a whole national tour. Needless to say, everything was put on hold. We do remain hopeful that the cities that were eager to bring our production of the Yiddish Fiddler to cities will once again want to. I'll skip the next one and we'll go to the, yeah, this is the cast doing, this is the bottle dance. And next slide. Oh yeah, so we'll skip this for a second. We'll come back to Sunrise Sunset. We'll finish with Sunrise Sunset. But I did want to speak about Anatevka, Stephen Skybell. When he first came in to audition, he told us that he had studied Yiddish and he always wanted to be in the Yiddish theater. I thought that was just a line. Later, I found out that he really did. He was he's a student of theater. He actually teaches theater at Yale Drama School, and he had played in the Broadway revival of Fiddler and was a seasoned Shakespearean actor. And when he came in, his Yiddish was almost perfect, and he just blew us away with his charm. Every day before the show, he would run his lines the whole show, and he's on the stage for most of the close to 3 hours. He didn't speak Yiddish, although he did study it briefly in college, and that's why he would, exercise his muscle every show. He would come in an hour and a half earlier and do his stretches and everything else, and go through the Yiddish. And of course, he had to know what everyone else was saying as well. So he had quite a job, and he's pretty miraculous, and become a good friend. He's in the last 8 months. We've been having a chavrusa every week where I teach him Yiddish songs. So he has about 50 songs in his repertoire, which we hope to go on tour with at some point. But anyway, I thought we'll maybe take some questions, but I thought we could sing Sunrise Sunset together. If you would go back to that phrase. Here the translation is more in line with the original, as you can see. So we can sing, and then if there are questions, happy to take questions. Is das mein Mädele, das Kleine? Is es das Jüngele, ich seh? Gib nur a guck, wie schön der wachsen so schön geworden, wenn ist ausgewachsen euch. Erst Nächten haben sie gespielt, Tag ein, Tag aus, Tag ein, Tag aus, das ist unser Leid. Sie haben nur gegeben Blumen, und über Nacht wächst aus ein Baum. Tag ein, Tag aus, Tag Soll ich sie helfen, öfter Sorge? Gott help sie jeden Frühmorgen. Tag Tag. Wenn sie sehen uns wie neugeboren und wie ein Neipor folgt uns, ist noch ein Gruppe da für uns. Etc., etc. Anyway, so that's the end of my prepared remarks, and I hope that there's of interest to you. And if I'm happy questions, if there are questions.
Indeed, there are numerous questions, Zalmen, but first of all, we want to say thank you so much. We're all thrilled, and this gathering this evening is not only from coast to coast, it also includes folks from south of the border and in Europe. It's a delight to have all of you here. Thank you for being here. Our question first from Naomi Johnson asked about the significance of the Lamed on the Fiddler, I guess you could say logo, or which at least appeared on the marquee of the off-Broadway theater in West 42nd Street.
You could probably scroll back to the picture of it. It's on it's on the marquee. I don't know the significance of it, frankly. I think it was just the artist's choice, to find a way to incorporate the Yiddish letters, into, I think it's probably one of the last slides, into the logo of the piece. The picture, however, is a special picture. If you can see that picture, the picture is of the daughters with Tevye, which I think Joel really wanted, that the feeling of the family to be very much central. You can't, it's cut off, but on the bottom is all the picture, all of the daughters are in the picture as well. Yeah, but the letter is just, I think, an homage to the Yiddish alphabet.
Okay, we're going to move to another question. Speaking of not so much Tevye's daughters, but if you had to pick a favorite, Jakob Bloom asks, what is Zalmen's favorite song?
Oh my. I never tired. I conducted the show pretty much every night. I did have other conductors doing it, and I never tired conducting the show, because I found I found the score to be such a genius score. I have to say that a lot of the dance music was some of my most favorite music of the show. Some of the dance music in the wedding, and there's, I think each song, if you look at the whole score, I think you find beauty in each song. If I had to single one out, I'd probably look at "Far from the Home I Love" as one of my favorite, most beautiful moments. So.
Okay, here's another question. Were there any edits made to modernize the translation?
Well, not so much to modernize. When they did we had the recording to go by in terms of how they fit the music, the Yiddish words to the music. We had the Yiddish text, the book that was published, but in many cases the Yiddish didn't scan as well with the music. They didn't honor the rhyme scheme of Bach and Harnick. And I felt that was vital to people's appreciation of it, because people are so used to the rhyme schemes of the English, that I felt that the Yiddish had to have the same kind of rhyme scheme. So we had to adapt certain things. I mean, one of the things that I did change was the opening line. The Yiddish original was "A Fiddler auf dem Dach, a Rob von Zinnen" name, and I changed that to "Meshuga," because I realized that that word would be something that would be a familiar word to people's ears right from the start. So instead of "A Fiddler auf dem Dach, a Rob von Zinnen," he says "A Fiddler auf dem Dach, Meshuga" name. So that was one of the changes. But we made some other changes like that, but not so much to modernize it, but just to in the songs to stay true to the rhyme schemes.
Okay, here's another one. I'm going to amend this just a bit. If you could talk about the challenges for the non-Jewish cast to learn Yiddish, and I would say for the cast as a whole, not everybody is Steven Skybell.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a big challenge for everyone. I mean, Joel would, that was the key in the audition process. We would often see somebody that was gave an incredible audition on every level, and then he or she would do the Yiddish, and we just, as soon as they walked out the room and Joel said, well, isn't it, and we turned to him and said, no, that person just is not possible. We understood that we had a very limited time for them to get the Yiddish so that they could sound completely natural. So it was an issue, but these 26 and eventually 30 people really had incredible ears, and really worked hard at it till the very end. We gave notes all the way through. I gave notes all the way through performances, uptown, even when Yiddish, when little things would creep in. But it was a challenge, and not just as you correctly pointed out, it wasn't just so much the non-Jewish crowd. It was the Jew. It was, it was anybody who it was putting a new language into their mouths and getting them to be able to feel it. Joel would rehearse the scenes in English first, and then he would do the scenes in Yiddish. At first, I was a little frustrated by that, but I understood his process. He needed to get to the truth of the scene with the actor in their comfortable language, and then they had to go through and work on the Yiddish, and then we would give the notes for each scene.
Okay, I have, there are some really, these are wonderful and thoughtful questions. And I know that having seen some of your productions at the museum downtown, I'm aware of the fact that there are super titles included in the production, so no one will lose any of the translation of what the language is as it's being performed. But Nicole asked, were there any moments that played differently to audiences who didn't speak Yiddish?
I don't know. I can't really answer that. I don't know. But I do know that, because of the super titles, which when we moved uptown, they were on the side. When we were downtown, they were on top. People never were out of the loop. Everyone understood. Everyone got it. And many of the comments were, we stopped looking at the super titles because we knew what was going on. We knew the story, and we just wanted to enjoy hearing the language. I can't think specifically of a moment that worked differently in the Yiddish than it did. I think, the whole scene at the wedding, the Batchem scene, when the Batchem gets up on the chair and he tells you what the Chassan Sad brought to the wedding and what Kala Sad brought to the wedding. That had a very Yiddish-lach feel to it, because of the writing, and I don't think that was very present in the original.
Okay, here's another one. As you prepare, please God, post-COVID to mount productions in other countries, what will you change in terms of casting, rehearsals, performances? Do you get a say in that? Or is that up to the producers?
No, of course we get a say in it, but it's all we really don't know. I mean, the cast became a real mishpacha, a real family. They keep in touch. One of our cast members just wrote a book about, our youngest cast members wrote a book about what it was like to be backstage and in the whole process. It's a very tight-knit group. It would be, nothing would make me happier to be able to pick up where we stopped. And if we go to Australia, if we go to China, for instance, if that happens, to bring them, or if we go around the country, to invite them to be a part of it, if they could. They were all very, very special and became very much involved with the show and with the experience. And we would have talkbacks after the show where audiences would want to know how they felt, how they related to the audiences. And then, I had my back to the audience conducting, but they had the experience of seeing the audience laugh, cry, whatever. And so that was quite an experience for them. They had never expected it. But as soon as we opened downtown, they knew that we had something special, and it was very, so I would hope, so the answer is, I hope to be able to bring everyone on tour when and if that happens.
And I know from having heard enough of this talk in a previous iteration, you shared information about the minimalist set and utilizing the word Torah. Do you want to speak a little bit about that?
Sure. When the designers and Joel invited me to come see the set for the first time, I went to their studio, and Beowulf Borit constructed a little diorama, which is a little box to simulate what the set would look like. And they showed me what it would look like, which was, as you saw, pretty much parchment on the stage and just the word Torah. And my first reaction was, that's it. I didn't say that to them. I said to myself, that's the set of this new production of, with Fiddler, with Joel Grey, and with, you Tony Award winners. And as they started to talk to me about their feelings about why the set was as simple as it was and as stark as it was, with the idea of just the word Torah in on that parchment, basically honoring the text and honoring the feelings and honoring the emotions that text and music brought, and saying, well, we can't compete with the last Broadway production or the first or any Broadway production that you've ever seen, because it's not a $15 million production. This is what it is. We were, downtown. We were doing it in a 320 seat house, which is, a fraction of what a Broadway house would be. So we had to do it on a very limited budget, but yet these artists, these creative artists, found a way to bring it. And then when they told me that at the end of the act, and this is a spoiler alert for those of you who will see it, that the Torah gets ripped, that parchment gets ripped by the Cossacks in the pogrom at the end of Act 1. And I realized that we were going to be left with a ripped Torah at the end of Act 1. I got it, I said, oh, okay, I understand. And then I embraced it wholeheartedly. So that was that moment for me.
Okay, one last thing, give you also just a minute to catch your own breath. I think many of us who know about this Fiddler know that you cast, the Fiddler was cast as a woman. Do you want to comment about her contributions?
Yeah, we had a wonderful woman violinist, Lauren Jean Thomas, who is an actor and a violinist. We were obligated by equity to hire an actor in that role, because none of the previous fiddlers had ever had a real fiddler doing it. But I really wanted to have a real fiddler on the stage. I didn't want them to be simulating that. But we were obligated to find an actor who could play the violin. And that was the challenge. And we there, it's New York City, so we had a bunch. We didn't have 20, but we had maybe a half a dozen people to look at. And as soon as we saw who was coming in, we realized that this is conceivable that this will be a woman. And all of us said, wow, how nice would that be? How special would that be in terms of, just something different, something new, something different. And she also brought a lot of, it's an acting role. It's not just a playing role. It's really, it's Tevye's subconscious in many of the soliloquy moments and the dream scenes, and in the moments where he's thinking about what to do, and he's talking to God, and then the fiddler appears. And so they worked out a whole intricate connection between the two of them, between Tevye and the fiddler, and of course with the choreographer and director, kind of creating that relationship. And so she really, I believe, added a lot to the emotions of the evening.
Agreed. Okay, back to a few set questions. If you know the answer, whether you'll be using the same set design when you go on tour, and I'm here presuming that the set design team came up with the whole change of the set design for that dream, the From a Sarah dream scene, which is very unique in and of itself.
Yeah, the dream was done. Half of it was done behind a curtain, so there's a lot of shadows and shadows involved, which was part of the choreographer's conception. But absolutely, we're committed to the design and to the whole gestalt of the production. The ripping of the Torah, as you can imagine, if you're thinking about a piece of scenery that gets ripped every time, that's a lot of paper to reproduce and to bring out. So they've been in discussion when we were about to go on tour about, is there a way to make it, with the producers, of course, we're trying to think, is there a way to make it so that it's the same piece? It's a kind of, not Velcro, but some kind of but the designer kind of made that, and poo-pooed that quickly, because the excitement is to really to of that moment. So, but yes, we're committed to the design team to the extent that they're available to participate.
Okay. We're going to let you have a moment to get your thoughts ready. People are already ready to buy tickets when you go on tour. I see the questions in the chat include Boston, New England, Denver. Good luck with Denver. If you have the money to bring the company here, then we'll all buy tickets.
Yeah.
West Coast, Australia, China. We all look forward to seeing the next Fiddler in Yiddish take the stage. Let's have you take this moment now to offer information about your upcoming Hanukkah extravaganza.
Thank you. I'd love to tell you about this next event that we're if you go online to NYTF and National Yiddish Theater, folksbina.org/live, you'll come across over 60 performances that we've done in the last several months of online performances. My own concerts, other people's concerts, some talks, some interviews, some interesting interviews. And as we are a nonprofit, we are always looking for support. And so on December 8th, we'll have an event. It'll be a free event, actually. There it is. Thank you. So it's a free event. You just have to register, but you can see we have some shiny names, as my executive director likes to call them, of people who have seen Fiddler. On the top will be coming and will be sending us a message. And we have performers from all over the world, from Japan, from Australia, from Germany, participating. People who have been in our productions, people whom I've worked with in the past. So it'll be a fun hour and a half at the most of Yiddish and English. Everything will be with super titles, and it's a free event. So you just go to the website, nytf.org, and there's information on our website, and there'll be a press release coming out soon. So I hope that some of you will come and join us that evening.
Okay. And now, as they say, this is the important time for me to share with you that, as you saw at the beginning, we have many sponsors. I posted all of them in the chat at the beginning. And now that we have done 4 of these, it's incredible to see how much interest there is in terms of the music, the armchair travel, the wonderful experience of meeting and greeting somebody in this context, really a very intimate context, given that it's still Zoom, and making all of this work. Well, of course, that also takes money. And the Colorado Hebrew Chorale is hoping that between now and your end of the year, making contributions, that you will be thinking of us. We do have a donate panel that I believe Seth will be showing shortly. Otherwise, and here it is. I think if you find the donate button, it is, there it is. Visit coloradohebrewchorale.org, and that's how you can help us out and help us continue these programs into 2021. The chorale's next program of L'chaim will be on Monday evening, December the 14th, the 5th night of Hanukkah, and our own Leah Peer, founder and music director of Kol Nashim, the chorale's women's choir, will be doing an evening of Israeli Hanukkah songs, and we hope everybody will be back and join us then. So with this, I am now going to say I would like to apologize if I didn't get to your question, but honoring the time of the evening, especially for Zalmen on the East Coast, for whom it is 10:31 in the evening, we raise a cup, we say L'chaim. Thank you so very, very much for being part of this, and we look forward to seeing Fiddler at some future time.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
See ya, everybody.